A meal delivery service while you're taking a GLP-1 medication. Is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? Hey everybody, good morning. It's Allie. I'm on a fantabulous weight loss journey, and hopefully you'll hit that subscribe button and come along for the ride. So today I wanted to talk about meal delivery services. Whether you're considering Nutrisystem or Noom or Blue Apron or any of the other services that are available to you, there are a couple of factors that you really need to take into account before you make the decision to purchase those meal plans. The first thing that you need to take into account is where you are on your weight loss or GLP-1 journey. If you are just starting out and you are within the first 3 to 4 months, I don't recommend that you do a meal delivery service. And there are a few reasons for that. One, you need to see how the medication is going to affect you. You need to see if you're going to be having side effects. And you also need to have a really good idea of how much food you will be consuming. Some people start out on these medications and they don't feel anything at lower doses. So if you're investing money in a meal delivery service, you may be doing yourself a disservice because you're going to be eating essentially the same amount, right? Because you're not really feeling the appetite suppression. You're not feeling that indication of fullness or satiety, right? It takes a while for the medication to build up in your system. So if you're one of those people that feels nothing, you're going to be blowing through that food, eating at a normal level, right? Whatever your normal is at the time that you start. And in the case of overeating, you will be doing yourself a disservice because you will end up eating more calories, which means if you're in a calorie surplus, you may gain weight. The other thing that you really need to make a priority, if you are feeling the medication, if you are having side effects, is addressing those side effects. That really needs to be your focus in the first few months. Many people are not used to dealing with constipation or diarrhea or, dealing with nausea on a regular basis. All of this may be completely new and overwhelming for them. So if you end up being one of those people and you need time to navigate that space of side effects, if you're doing a meal delivery, right, you may overeat, you may undereat, you may find that there are certain things in the meal delivery service that you can't eat. For example, some people, like myself, are very challenged when it comes to digesting certain meats. So it can be problematic, and the last thing you want to do, especially if you're paying a lot of money for a GLP-1 medication, is pay a lot of money for a food service and then find out that you can't eat part of it or that certain things are causing you digestive upset, right? In the beginning, you really need to focus on nutrition. You need to focus on making healthy choices, right? Revamping your diet. And that can be very challenging if you're trying to track everything that you're eating and you are eating these pre-prepared meals that may have items in there that you normally wouldn't eat. If your regular diet doesn't include Brussels sprouts, then having Brussels sprouts twice a week may be problematic for your system. And it's going to be more challenging for you to know, okay, is this a problem with the medication? Am I just not digesting this vegetable well? Or is this an issue of, I would have had this issue if I wasn't on this medication because I never eat Brussels sprouts. And I'm just using Brussels sprouts as an example, but it could be a meat. It could be another protein. It could be, right, another vegetable. Like, you just don't know until you try. So having that foundation at the beginning in the first few months where you can really figure out what foods work for you, what foods don't work for you, how much you're going to be eating, can really give you a strong baseline. And then if you want to do a meal delivery service, you can. One of the other components that many of us need to learn at the beginning of our journey, and this was very true for me, is portion sizes. And having foods that are pre-portioned for you can do you a disservice because, right, it's already pre-portioned for you. You're not having to weigh it out. You're not having to measure it out. And while you don't necessarily have to do that forever and ever, it is important, especially if you come from a background of overeating, to learn the correct portion sizes and to be able to integrate that into your nutrition as you go forward. The other thing that you're going to want to consider is cost over time. So, for example, right now, we are in a shortage for many GLP-1 medications. I'm specifically on Mounjaro, and there is an extreme shortage of Mounjaro. They only have a couple of doses listed on the FDA site that are in shortage, but it's actually all of the doses because people have been jumping either down or up in doses to try to get a hold of the medication while it's in shortage. So if you start out your journey with a meal delivery service, and then you find that you can't get a hold of your medication, you may consider switching to compound. And I have a video that's coming up soon about compound, but insurance doesn't cover compounded medication, which means you'll be paying out of pocket. So if you're paying out of pocket and you're also paying out of pocket for a meal service, and then you say, okay, well, it's more important for me to have my medicine, so I'm going to stop the meal service, right? If you don't have that foundation where you learned to make healthy choices, you learned about portion sizes, right? You may be well into your journey and you're essentially starting over nutritionally, and then you're going to have to learn everything that you should have learned at the beginning. So you'll kind of be behind. And that can be very challenging. And one thing that I've noticed in the support groups is that it is a pain point and becomes very frustrating for people because they think they're not eating very much, but they're not used to tracking their calories because they didn't do that from the beginning. And so they become frustrated because they say, oh, well, I'm not losing weight, but I'm not eating that much. Well, how much is not that much, right? And I always use my handful of almonds as kind of the example here, but it's really something where you're doing yourself a disservice. Whereas if you do the reverse, right, you have that foundation, you learn about portion sizes, you learn about calorie density, right, and being in a calorie deficit. If you learn all of that in the beginning, then if you want to incorporate, a meal delivery service, you can, and you can always fall back to your original nutrition plan should something change. This is also the same reason why I personally do not recommend Weight Watchers. I know that they have a GLP-1 program and that many people are using it, but Weight Watchers has a very high fail rate. And I am convinced it's because they teach people points. They do not teach them how to accurately track calories and how to be in a calorie deficit if you're trying to lose weight. And it is very easy to make 0 point or very low point meals that still have calories. You can actually eat a lot on Weight Watchers that is 0 points or very low points and gain weight because you're in a calorie surplus. And I personally am convinced that that's why they have such a high fail rate, because people think, right? And it's just natural human thought process. Okay, this counts for 0. That means I can have whatever I want. I can have all of it, right? And there's all these, 0-calorie desserts and 0-calorie meals, and those 0 points, when I say 0 calorie, I mean 0 point meals. Those meals still have calories. And if you are in a surplus at the end of the day and at the end of the week, you will gain weight. And many, many people get frustrated with that. And, that's why they have a high fail rate. I plan on making a video about Weight Watchers that's more in depth, but I just want to use that as an example that's not necessarily food delivery, but it's still in that same vein of you need to learn in the beginning and take your nutritional education seriously. Learn about protein, learn about what level of carbs is good for you. You shouldn't be in a mindset of severe restriction. You should be in a mindset of, okay, I need to learn how to eat a balanced diet now that I'm on this medication that's going to make my body work properly, because that's what it does. So it's important to learn all of those components. And while it seems easier to just do a meal delivery service or calculate points instead of having to track calories, if your circumstances change, right, over time, if your insurance kicks you off the medication and you're on your own, right, you need to have that foundation that you can fall back to. It's very, very important. Okay, so if you made it this far in the video, give me a thumbs up. If you found it helpful, give me a thumbs up. If you hated it, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing. Make sure you check out my other videos, because I have a lot of helpful tips and tricks to help you along your weight loss journey and to help you with GLP-1 medications. And as always, be kind, rewind.